You remember her scream, not because it was loud, but because it sounded rehearsed. A silent dinner, the tremble of wine in her glass. Then the avalanche over nothing. She said it was because you forgot her favorite dessert, but that's not why she cried. You never touched her the way her father didn't. You never lied to her the way her mother did. And so she built a crisis not to suffer, but to feel known. There was no love in the performance, only repetition, only the echo of childhood pain, dressed in adult lipstick, begging for an audience. You thought you were the man, you were the stage. She tore down your life like she was tearing down her mother's wedding dress. And when you stood still, calm, sane, she called it cruelty. But you already know this, because she's not the first. And if you listen long enough, you'll realize she's not even the last. If this whisper already knows, you let it echo. Like the video. Leave your shadow in the comments. Subscribe. And stay near the silence. You thought it was about you the way she stared across the room. The silence waited like a noose. The slam of the door that never quite shut. But it was never about you. You were a character in a play written long before your name existed. And the script buried in a nursery drawer with cracked mirrors, half-broken dolls, and a lullaby that always ended too early. She doesn't see you. She sees the flicker of her father's back as he walks away from her mother's breakdown. She sees a wine glass tipping over a white tablecloth and no one cleaning it. She sees hands that once held her, now holding keys, walking out. And so she writes you in not as a lover, but as a prop. You will either leave or you will stay and refuse to bleed on cue. Either way, the applause must come. There is a cruelty in her tears, and you feel it. They do not ask for comfort. They ask for submission. Every time you reach to calm her storm, she retreats further into the flood. She is not drowning. She is directing. You, the silent understudy, must learn your lines or be replaced. She doesn't want peace. Peace is unfamiliar, and therefore threatening. Her childhood trained her nervous system to equate love with disruption. It was the shouting in the hallway that meant someone cared. It was the slammed doors, the apologies, the passionate reunions that made her feel wanted. So when you give her stillness, she panics. When you show her patience, she provokes. She throws fire at you not because you're cruel, but because you won't burn. You mistake this for passion. You tell yourself she's intense, that she feels deeply, but that's not what's happening. You're witnessing the reenactment of a wound, the endless cycle of unconscious compulsion. Freud called it repetition compulsion. You might call it love, because you've been trained too. You've mistaken being chosen with being needed, but she does not choose you. She replays you. When she throws a glass and cries in your lap, she is not asking you to understand. She is asking the universe to remember what it forgot the moment a little girl cried in a dark hallway and no one came. She thinks if she cries hard enough this time, maybe someone will stay. But if you do stay, she will hate you, because then you are not her father, and the illusion must collapse. You wonder why her affection feels like hunger. Why her kindness always follows collapse. Why her love seems most sincere after she has accused you of being heartless, selfish, cruel. It's because in her world, love is war. Not because she wants it that way, but because it's all she knows. In war, people stay. In drama, there is meaning. In crisis, there is contact. And even pain feels like intimacy when the alternative is silence. You think love is a bond. She thinks it is a test. She creates the problem to test whether you will solve it. She throws you into a maze she designed just to see if you will crawl through it. Not because she wants to be rescued, but because she needs to know she can still control the fire. This is not manipulation. It is deeper than that. It is a psychic survival strategy coded into her body before she could form full sentences. Love was never warm, it was never soft, it was conditional, chaotic, and cruel, and now she can only trust what hurts. The theater she drags you into, it's not random, it's sacred. It is a shrine to her mother's shame, her mother's silence, her mother's breakdowns behind locked bathroom doors. The tragedy must continue, or the pain becomes real. So she lights the candles, sharpens the knives, and waits for the scene to begin again. You are either a savior or an enemy. She will force you to choose, and whichever you pick, she will punish you for it. You try to speak logic. You try to hold her hand and ask, "What's wrong?" But your calmness becomes an accusation. Your reason becomes neglect. She wants a witness, not a repairman. She wants the wound to be seen, not stitched. And when you fail to read her mind, she cries. You don't care, not because it's true, but because she needs it to be. Otherwise, there's no story. And you're not innocent either. You play along. Maybe you like being needed. Maybe her chaos makes you feel important. Maybe you mistake the high-stakes drama for intensity, and the constant crisis for proof of love. You confuse adrenaline with emotion. You confuse survival with meaning. You, too, are acting. What you call being patient is often just being addicted to chaos. She collapses and you catch her, but deep down, you wonder, will she fall again if I'm not there? You like the way she begs after the explosion. You like the way she sobs in your arms. It's the only time she tells you she loves you without needing to prove it with pain. But you're not rescuing her, you're reinforcing the script. And someday, when you finally grow tired, when you stop reacting, when you decide you want peace, she will say you've changed, that you've grown cold, that you've stopped loving her. But the truth is simpler. You stopped performing. You gave her a stage, and she mistook it for safety. You gave her kindness, and she twisted it into threat. Because love, to her, is a test of endurance, not a gift freely given. And when you pass the test too many times, she moves the goalpost. She must, or the illusion of control collapses. This is not her fault, nor is it yours. It is the haunting of a childhood she cannot name, but must relive. And you, whether you like it or not, are now her scene partner, her stand-in for a ghost that never came back, her mirror, her enemy, her savior, all in one. You will never win, not because you are unworthy, but because there was never anything to win. The moment you stepped onto her stage, you were already guilty, not of hurting her, but of failing to rewrite her past. So she screams, so she breaks, so she tests, because silence is too loud, because peace is too empty, because somewhere beneath all the fire, she still believes that if she cries the right way, someone will finally stay. But even then, she won't believe you, not until you hurt her, not until you leave, because only then will you fit the script. Only then will she feel what she recognizes, and only then will she finally say, "Now I know it was real." You've heard her say it in passing, "I'm nothing like my mother." She says it with a shiver in her tone, a bitterness too sharp for such a casual sentence, and yet, when the door slams and her voice rises and her face twists into something older than she is, you see it. You see the woman she swore she would never become standing in the doorway of your home. But she doesn't. She can't. Because to her, the mirror is always cracked just enough to blame the reflection, never herself. Her mother did not teach her how to love. Her mother taught her how to perform love, how to cry at the right moment, how to feign collapse when control slips, how to turn affection into leverage. And now she repeats it not because she wants to, but because it's the only language she speaks when her heart starts burning. You are not the man she wants. You are the altar on which she sacrifices every unshed tear she was forbidden to feel as a child. The mother wound is not a scar, it's a mouth, a hungry one. It opens every time she feels ignored, dismissed, or seen too clearly. You touch her too gently, and the wound whispers, he doesn't care. You touch her too forcefully, and it screams, he's like her. There is no correct pressure, no safe way to hold her. Every embrace becomes evidence in a silent trial, and the verdict was always decided before you even met. She remembers the way her mother cried behind doors, but never to her. She remembers the ice, the resentment, the performative caretaking, brushing her hair with too much force, smiling with too little warmth. And now she cannot give what she never received. So she gives you tension, she gives you accusation, she gives you crisis after crisis in hopes that one day someone will choose her when she is ugly, loud, and impossible to love. Because her mother never did. You tell her she's beautiful, she shrinks. You tell her she's safe, she flinches. These are not compliments. These are threats to the internal machinery she built to survive. She can't feel love unless it hurts. She can't trust affection unless it's been earned with blood. So she breaks things on purpose, not to destroy them, but to see if you'll stay. That's her version of intimacy, shared trauma she orchestrates. She was not born broken. She was trained. Little girl hands reaching up to a mother too busy, too tired, too hollow to respond. The first betrayal wasn't abandonment, it was invisibility. It was watching her mother pretend, perform, collapse, but never hold her. So now she performs her own chaos in front of you, hoping that this time someone will pick up the pieces instead of stepping over them. You think it's about now, about you. It isn't. Every time she lashes out, she's not punishing you. She's punishing the mother who withheld. The mother who smiled for guests but never kissed her forehead. The mother who told her to be quiet when she needed to scream. The mother who said, I love you with cold hands and colder eyes. She's trying to rewrite a script where this time someone will love her anyway. But rewriting the past is never quiet. It's violent, desperate, ritualistic. She doesn't want peace. She wants catharsis. So she makes you the villain because it's the only role she understands. You are not her enemy. You are her offering to a god she stopped believing in, but still sacrifices to. Every fight begins with nothing, a misplaced word, a half smile she misreads, a moment of stillness she fills with dread. Then the transformation begins. Her voice changes, her eyes cloud, and suddenly, you're not in the room anymore. Her mother is the one who shamed her, mocked her tears, accused her of being too emotional just like now. You say, calm down. She hears, you're too much. You say, let's talk. She hears, I'm leaving. The dialogue was written decades ago. You're just mouthing the parts. And what she wants, what she truly wants, is not healing. It's permission to rage, because the little girl inside her never got to, because she had to be perfect, quiet, pleasing. So now she becomes monstrous, not because she is, but because it's the only way to be seen. Her chaos is not random, it's precise, it's ancestral. You are being asked to witness not one woman's pain, but a lineage of women taught to suffer beautifully, silently, and alone. She recreates her mother's face in yours. She draws the betrayal forward like a curtain, and then she invites you to break her heart just so she can finally say, I knew it. That's not pessimism, that's prophecy. That's prophecy masquerading as disappointment. And when you don't betray her, she betrays you. because the logic of the unconscious cannot tolerate the unfamiliar. If you refuse to abandon her, she will create a reason to leave. She'll call you weak, or cold, or manipulative, not because you are, but because if you're not, then her whole survival story shatters, and she has no idea what's left beneath it. You try to reassure her. You say you're not going anywhere, but that promise is a weapon, because the moment she believes you, she starts preparing for the betrayal, and in her mind, it is always coming. Maybe not now, maybe not next month, but soon. So she preemptively ruins everything. She cheats, she withholds, she punishes, not out of malice, out of terror. She would rather destroy what she loves than wait for it to be taken. You wonder why she tests you, why she calls at odd hours just to accuse you of something you didn't do, why she watches your eyes like a sniper, scanning for micro-rejections. She's not looking for truth. She's looking for safety, and finding it would mean admitting that her mother was wrong. That love can be safe, that she didn't have to suffer to be held, and that is more unbearable than any betrayal you could ever commit. She drags the past into the present because it's the only way she knows how to live. She keeps her mother alive by becoming her in reverse. She does the opposite and ends up in the same place. The crying girl becomes the cold woman. The ignored daughter becomes the accusing lover. The cycle continues, dressed in different clothes, but bleeding the same. You ask why she doesn't get help, why she won't talk to someone, but she is talking. Every scream, every withdrawal, every crisis, it's a message in a bottle hurled into your chest. She doesn't want a therapist. She wants her mother to come back and say, "I was wrong," but ghosts don't apologize. And you are not her mother. You are just the placeholder for her rage. She doesn't want to hurt you. She wants to be understood, but not with words, with suffering, with sacrifice. She wants you to feel her history in your bones. And if you can't, she'll make you. And still, she loves you, but only in the way she knows how, through performance, punishment, collapse. You are the page, the wound, the mirror, and if you shatter, she will cry not for you, but for the girl she once was. The girl who wasn't allowed to cry when she needed to most. She wanted a wedding, but never a future. You thought she was planning a life. She was planning an ending. The veil, the dress, the trembling hands, all costumes for a funeral that hadn't yet happened. You stood at the altar thinking you were stepping into love, but she had already begun rehearsing the collapse. She didn't marry you to build. She married you to bury something. Perhaps herself, perhaps her mother, perhaps the last flicker of hope that love could be safe. But once the ring was on, her eyes changed, not because she was content, but because the illusion had run out of road, and now the only thing left was to sabotage what looked too much like happiness. Happiness, to her, is not just unfamiliar, it is untrustworthy. You saw the signs, didn't you? The way she cried the night before the wedding, not from joy, but panic. The way she picked fights after choosing the cake, after visiting the venue, after each moment of seeming perfection. You called it stress. She called it proof that something was about to go wrong, and if nothing did, she would ensure it would. The death drive doesn't wear black, it wears white. It walks down aisles and smiles for photographs. It says "I do" with a hollow chest and a clenched jaw. She didn't want the marriage. She wanted the crash, because it's only in the wreckage that she feels real. You noticed it on the honeymoon, the flicker in her eyes when you held her too gently. The distant stare after soft mornings. No fight, no tension, just quiet. And it unsettled her. Because love without adrenaline feels like emptiness. Because she has no map for tenderness that doesn't cost her something. She creates storms to feel the thunder in her chest. Not because she enjoys pain, but because pain proves something exists. Without it, She feels like a ghost in a borrowed house. She picks at you, accuses you, withdraws. And when you ask what's wrong, she says, "You wouldn't understand." She's right, because even she doesn't fully understand the way her own mind feeds on ruin. You think she's angry. She's not. She's terrified of peace, of safety, of being known. Because if you really saw her, you'd see how hollow she feels, and then you'd leave. So she burns the room before you can walk out. She'd rather set fire to the home than wait to be abandoned in it. There are nights she clings to you like a child, and others she spits venom with no cause. She calls you names, says things she swore she'd never say. Not because you deserve them, but because she needs to tear you down to match the hatred she holds for herself. You become the canvas for her inner war, and the worse she treats you, the more ashamed she becomes. And shame, to her, feels like love. It's familiar, it's warm, it binds. You find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do. You find yourself shrinking, managing her moods, tracking her tone like a soldier scanning for landmines. You don't know when it started, but at some point you began walking on glass to avoid the scream that always comes. Eventually, you've begun to disappear, not because she asked you to, but because the only way to survive her storms is to become less. She says you don't fight for her, that you're emotionally absent, but what she wants isn't your presence, it's your self-sacrifice. She wants you to ache for her, bleed for her, burn for her, not because she enjoys your suffering, but because she can't feel connected unless something's dying. The rituals are precise. She picks a day when things are too quiet. She starts with a question, a small one, but loaded. Do you even love me if you say yes? She accuses you of lying. If you hesitate, she accuses you of hiding. The truth was never relevant. Only the spiral, only the descent. You wonder, sometimes, if she's trying to drive you away, but she's doing the opposite. She's trying to test your limit because only when you're on the edge does she believe you're truly here. Drama is the bloodletting. It's how she checks your pulse. And when you finally explode, when you scream or threaten to leave her eyes soften, because in that moment, your pain equals proof. Proof that she matters. Proof that she's not alone in the fire. You call this toxic, she calls it honest, because nothing in her childhood was honest unless it was catastrophic. Smiles were fake, hugs were currency, silence was punishment, but rage was true. Rage meant someone cared enough to fight, so she makes you fight. Not because she hates you, but because she loves you in the only way she was ever loved. You can't save her, not because she's beyond help, but because she doesn't want to be saved, not yet. She wants to be witnessed. She wants someone to stand in the ruins with her and not flinch. She doesn't need a therapist. She needs a mirror that doesn't break when she throws stones. And you might be that mirror until you're not. Because eventually, you'll crack. You'll wake up and realize your joy has rotted, that you no longer laugh the way you used to, that you're constantly on edge, bracing for the next collapse. And when you leave, she'll say, "I knew it," and she'll weep, not for you, but for the prophecy fulfilled. But until then, she will wear the dress, she will play the wife, she will smile in public and weep in private and make love like it's a war. She will kiss you with desperation, not to connect, but to consume, because inside her, the death drive is not a desire to die, it's a need to destroy anything that looks like safety, because safety always preceded betrayal. The bed becomes a battlefield, the kitchen a cold theater, the nights rituals of rupture. She doesn't want a home, She wants a stage where the pain can live and breathe and shout, because if it doesn't, she goes numb. And numbness, to her, is worse than grief. She will beg you to stay and then push you to leave. She will cry in your arms and slap your face the next day. She will say, "Don't give up on me," and then punish you for not giving up, because inside she is split. One part wants to love, the other part wants to vanish. The paradox is this: she cannot trust joy, so she turns love into grief, and then demands you mourn the death of a connection that never had time to live. And you will. You will grieve her while still lying beside her. You will miss her while she kisses you, because the woman you met, the one who dreamed, who laughed, who opened up like spring, is buried beneath 10,000 rehearsals of pain, and she doesn't know how to come back. So she wears the wedding dress like a shroud, and every morning is a funeral for the happiness she doesn't believe she deserves. And you become both groom and undertaker, holding her hand while the part of her that could love you dies a little more each day. You think she wants freedom. She doesn't. She wants release. There's a difference. Freedom means new choices. Release means surrendering to the cycle. She doesn't want to escape the storm. She wants to drown in it with you holding her hand. And maybe you will. Maybe you'll go down with her, or maybe you'll walk away, finally understanding that you were not her husband, her lover, her partner. You were the final actor in a play she began as a child, and now that the curtain's fallen, she can finally cry. But even in that cry, you'll hear it the echo of every man before you. Not real, not personal, just ritual, just collapse, just the death drive. In white. You see her in the doorway again. Not the woman, the shadow behind her, still wearing the dress, still holding the bouquet. But the flowers have withered, and there's soil on her hem. She says nothing now. Not because she's calm, but because the collapse has completed. There is no one left to accuse. No one left to leave. A flicker behind her eyes. Was that relief or recognition? She steps back into the house alone, and for a moment you wonder if the walls were ever real. You hear the mirror crack, but it's not glass. It's the sound of silence learning how to scream without her. You do not follow, because this time you understand. It was never your story. You were just the final name in a script she wrote long before you knew how to say "I do." And the echo still wearing white